Hey, welcome back. Today we are on location at the dentist office. I'm only joking, we're not. Remember me complaining about tooth pain? My wisdom tooth was growing sideways. I had to have a tooth extraction. I've been thinking a lot about teeth recently. Whenever I think about teeth in A Song of Ice and Fire, I always think about poor Pia at Harrenhal. Pia is one of Lady Went's original castle staff, and she was born at Harrenhal. Jamie meets her on his journey south when he stops there, and then again when he is coming back north, and the mountain had previously taken command there. She had made the mistake of speaking when Sir Gregor wanted quiet, so the mountain had smashed her teeth to splinters with a mailed fist and broken her pretty little nose as well. When she speaks to Jamie, she covered her mouth when she spoke to hide her broken teeth. Imagine having to wait on the Lord Commander of the King's Guard. You're going to want to hide your teeth if they're broken splinters. Poor girl. Jamie thinks that Pia was still pretty enough so long as she kept her mouth closed. And despite his way with words and describing women, Jamie is one of the only males we see give her any respect at all. He considers but doesn't use her. And when one of the mountain's men tries, Jamie is like, nah, not under my roof, and has Ilan present Pia with the man's head, to which she had smiled through her broken teeth. Maybe it sticks with me because it's like a moment of Jamie trying to do the right thing. Maybe it's just like, Jesus, that poor girl that gets her teeth smashed in. I don't know. But today, we're going to take a look at the dental records of A Song of Ice and Fire. Having good teeth, white teeth, all your teeth, is a sign of good health. And in a world where these kind of arranged marriages exist, it's a useful way of saying if you're getting a good deal or if your potential partner is healthy. When Caitlin and Edmure are with Walder Rivers arranging the Frey marriages, Edmure asks if he can see his potential bride, and Walder Rivers, being a typical Frey, says you'll meet when you're wed, unless Lord Tully feels a need to count her teeth first. Because Edmure doesn't want a sickly, gummy bride, sickness or malnutrition is known within the realm to cause loose or missing teeth. As stated by Bowen Marsh when discussing rations, there will be sickness too, he went on. Bleeding gums and loose teeth. So, who do we know who has good teeth, white teeth? Well, first and foremost, the king himself, Robert Baratheon, is noted as having a flash of white teeth in the thicket of the huge black beard. Ned also notes that Cersei is said to have perfect teeth, and funnily enough, her twin Jaime is noted by Caitlin to also have perfect teeth. Well, I guess they really are twins. Sweet Donald Hill at the Wall is said to have white teeth and claims to be the bastard of some Lannister. Jane Paul is said by Theon to have pretty white teeth, which he fears for considering what happens to his own, but we'll get to that. Harold Harding, who Sansa is looking to tie down, like her mother, is inspecting his teeth and thinks that he has good teeth, straight and white. But it's not just Westerosi teeth. We have Taina Merryweather from Myr. Her teeth were white, her lips full and dark. Krasny's Mo Naklos, first try, shows his big white teeth when bargaining with Dany for the Unsullied in Astapor. And Gilly tells Sam about Koja from the Summer Isles. Her teeth were so big and white. It kind of scares Gilly. I mean, I guess she's not really used to saying that. The Blue Bard, which Cersei uses in her scheme against Margaery and hands to Qyburn, she first notes, his teeth are white. They are good teeth. Not the least bit crooked. But before long, blood was streaming down his chin from all his broken teeth. And later, blood bubbled through the holes where his front teeth had been. Poor dude, he lost his teeth as well as Pia. Stannis Baratheon, oh my dear lord. Right. He probably had good teeth once upon a time, being highborn and all, but the man grinds more than a stripper on Friday night. Do you know how many references there are to Stannis grinding his teeth or clenching his jaw. So far, only so far. 27! 27! That's ridiculous, right? Either his jaw is clenched, he's grinding his teeth, or he's being noted as doing such. And this isn't even like when he's asleep. The man needs a mouth guard. I mean, can you imagine, like, oh god, the noise? We're going to go through all of these references for Stannis. Maester Cresson fancied he could hear Lord Stannis grinding his teeth half a castle away. He always ground his teeth when he was angry. The king plunged into the fire with his teeth clenched. He ground his teeth together. When Robert gave the place to Renly, Stannis clenched his jaw so tight I thought his teeth would chatter. Stannis ground his teeth. The king ground his teeth. Davos could hear the faint sound of the king grinding his teeth. Stannis ground his teeth. Davos could hear Stannis grinding his teeth. A vein bulged, blue and swollen in the king's brow. The king ground his teeth together. His teeth ground side to side. Stannis ground his teeth. He stared at the painted table, with his teeth clenched hard. Stannis closed his mouth so hard his teeth snapped. He ground his teeth. Stannis ground his teeth. Stannis ground his teeth again, and his teeth were clenched. Stannis ground his teeth. He ground his teeth. Stannis ground his teeth. Stannis ground his teeth. Stannis endlessly grinding his teeth. Stannis ground his teeth. For a long moment, the only sound was the king grinding his teeth. The she-bear made him grind his teeth as well. I mean, how has he not just ground them away entirely? It's ridiculous. You know who else has interesting teeth who I completely forgot about? Tywin, at the wall. He has wooden teeth. Tywin smiled an oaken smile. His teeth were carved of wood and fit badly. He's noted as sucking on them twice and clacking them 4 times, which hopefully it's not a habit because that just sounds really annoying. But he's the only character that we've heard of with wooden teeth. It's quite interesting. I mean, he's been at the wall so long and he doesn't talk about where he's from as well. So I'm going to assume that he got his teeth from wherever he came from, rather than like a wood switch beyond the wall. Speaking of wood switchy type people, some people are even rumored to have green teeth. Bran says, the Walders used to say that eating frogs would turn your teeth green and make moss grow under your arms. And when he came closer, Bran saw that his eyes were the colour of moss, though his teeth looked as white as anyone else's. When speaking about Jojen, Walder is talking about, you know, the frogmen, the reeds, essentially, and how they are green and froggy and have green teeth. Don't be ridiculous. Bran sees them and notices that Jojen's teeth are white, like a highborn. Squishers, who are a mostly mythical creature who lived in Crackle Point in the Crown Lands, are also said to have rows of green teeth, sharp as needles. One person is thought of as having green teeth, and that's Lemoncloak by Merritt Frey. But considering Merritt Frey's state of mind, I think he was just mistaken. But it says, I asked a question. The speaker was a big bearded man with crooked green teeth and a broken nose, taller than Merritt, though not so heavy in the belly. A half-helm covered his head, a patched yellow cloak his broad shoulders. So obviously implying that that's Lemoncloak. But oddly enough, he's described by Arya in her thoughts as having bad teeth and a bushy brown beard, which, okay, it's not specific, but then Tom O7streams introduces him as this great lout with the brown teeth is Lem, short for Lemoncloak. So they are brown, then green? I mean, unless they're literally like, I don't know what is wrong with them. Is Merritt colorblind from his headaches as well, is a question. I think it's just likely a case of merits speaking off rather than them actually changing color to green. Another weird type of teeth that we hear about are filed teeth, which are just terrifying, right? The first and most memorable person that we hear about with filed teeth is, of course, Biter. He's one of the three in the cage that Yoren is taking to the wall, as he's escorting Arya. And Arya describes Biter as the gross, fat, bald one with the pointed teeth twice, and then also notes that they're yellow too. Biter hissed at her again, displaying a mouthful of yellowed teeth filed into points. Honestly, the stuff of nightmares. Brienne, who has that nightmare recognized, and has her face chewed up by Biter, saw his teeth, yellow and crooked, filed into points. Later, she also dreams that the legendary hero Clarence Crabbe's teeth had been filed into points when she faces him, in her dream. So it obviously haunts her. Dream, nightmare. In the north, we hear from Varamir that the wildlings known as cave dwellers have filed teeth, and Jon dreams that he's fighting men off the top of the wall, and one of them is a gaunt man with filed teeth. Maybe there's other types of wildling clans that file their teeth as well. Sounds likely. Cersei also saw men whose teeth had been filed into points during her walk of shame through King's Landing. Over in Essos, Tyrion notes one of Yazan Zokagas's other slaves had filed teeth and was like to growl at anyone who came too close to her cage. A little bit animalistic, that's quite scary. And Quentin Martell says that Sir Jairus Drinkwater returned to the pyramid to report that he had found beans, books, and old bilbone in one of Marine's less savory cellars, drinking yellow wine and watching naked slaves kill one another with bare hands and filed teeth. Pleasant. That sounds like a cracking Friday night. We also hear from time to time of people having red teeth, usually because they've been chewing on something called sour leaf. Masha Heddle, the innkeeper of the Crossroads Inn, is described by Catelyn in A Game of Thrones as chewing sour leaf night and day and seemed to have an endless supply of smiles and sweet cakes for the children. The sweet cakes had been soaked in honey, rich and heavy on the tongue. But how Catelyn had dreaded those smiles. The sour leaf had stained Masha's teeth a dark red and made her smile a bloody horror. Tyrion, who had last seen Masha Heddle at the same time as Catelyn, because Catelyn captured him, then returns later in A Game of Thrones and states the birds had eaten her lips and eyes and most of her cheeks, baring her stained red teeth in a hideous smile. Because, they've been going around doing some Lannister justice. Brienne meets a dwarf who is a holy brother of the faith in Duskendale. He very kindly offers her his seat, and Brienne notes that his teeth red from sour leaf. Tyrion again meets a sergeant of the Second Sons outside Marine, Smatch, and thinks of him as a skinny, stubble-jawed piece of work with teeth stained red from sour leaf. The whole habit of chewing sour leaf sounds quite gross. Snatch snorted and spat out a mouthful of red slime. Also, it stains your fingers as well as your teeth, unsurprisingly. The sergeant's fingers were stained mottled red from the juice of the sour leaf he chewed. We do know, as well, of one more character who chews sour leaf, and therefore has red teeth, and that's our beloved Marwyn the Mage, Archmaester Marwyn. Sam notes, sour leaf had stained his teeth a mottled red. He has that terrifying smile that Masha Heddle has. Marwyn smiled a ghastly smile, the juice of the sour leaf running red between his teeth. For some people, their teeth can make a lot of impact on their appearance, and Brienne is usually described in a very unflattering way by Catelyn and Jaime. Caitlyn's first impression and description of Brienne is that her features were broad and coarse, her teeth prominent and crooked, her mouth too wide, her lips so plump they seemed swollen. And later, she also describes Brienne's face shape, basically, taken over by her teeth. The wide, flat face, the thrust of her teeth. Caitlyn is harsh, but not cruel with her descriptions. Jaime is quite cruel. He says her face all horse teeth and glowering suspicion, and later that he's tired of her crooked teeth. Unfortunately for Brienne, when they're taken by the Bloody Mummers, they had knocked out 2 of her teeth. And yet, still, Jaime says it did nothing to improve her appearance. Brienne isn't ignorant to her appearance and has probably heard insults all her adult life. She even thinks of herself as having a horsey face and teeth that seemed almost too big for her mouth. Damn, if only Westeros could figure out braces, then she really would be Brienne the Beauty. Ah well, she still is, like, on the inside. Also, it's interesting to note that Brienne is on the larger side and that Giant's teeth are described as big square teeth. On to someone else we know very well, though, Tyrion, and he is described by Sansa as having crooked teeth. And funnily enough, he has something in common with Stannis. They both grind their teeth, though not so much with Tyrion as Stannis and his 27 bloody references. Tywin makes Tyrion ground his teeth together when chiding him about his female companions. And when sat in the dungeon after being framed for Joffrey's murder, he writes his only witness's name on the parchment, Sansa, and his teeth clenched so hard they hurt. When Jorah Mormont has him captured and holds him overnight chained awkwardly to a wall, he had to grind his teeth to keep from screaming when trying to move to relieve some of that strain. And later, the blow the big knight gave him cracked his head around and knocked him sideways, so hard that his head bounced off the deck. Blood filled his mouth as he staggered back onto one knee. He spat out a broken tooth. Jorah Mormont says to Tyrion, "You still have a few teeth left. If you want to keep them, stay away from me for the rest of this voyage." So the way Tyrion goes, he's going to be needing some wooden teeth. Ygritte is another character that we hear of with crooked teeth. Jon says her teeth were crooked, but very white, and when she smiled again, a flash of white teeth. Jon also says she had a warm smile despite her crooked teeth, and when she grinned, the crooked teeth didn't seem to matter. Cute. We hear of a lot of people with crooked teeth. The Hound is described by Brienne saying his teeth were awful, crooked, and streaked brown with rot. Sansa meets old Oswell Kettleblack, saying Oswell grinned, showing a mouthful of crooked teeth. William Wells, a knight from Dorne who went with Quentyn on his quest and died, is reflected on by Quentyn as William Wells with his freckles and his crooked teeth. Fearless with a lance. Tyrion describes Penny as her teeth were crooked, which made her shy with smiles. Alysanne Mormont is also described by Asha Greyjoy, saying Alysanne smiled, her teeth were crooked, but there was something ingratiating about that smile. Which, I don't know, I'm kind of seeing a theme of these people with crooked teeth. They might not be the friendliest of characters to look at, but they're kind of genuine people. They seem okay. Do I mean? They're friendly. They are friendly, at least. I wonder if there's a trend with the people who have yellow teeth. To start with, we have Illyrio Mopatis, a Magister of Pentos. Very greedy, and he's noted by Daenerys early on as showing a thin glimpse of crooked yellow teeth. Later on in the story, when Tyrion is hosted at Illyrio's manse, he smiled, showing a mouthful of crooked yellow teeth. And then we get it reinforced again, saying he smiled, showing all his crooked yellow teeth. Chiggin, who is a sellsword alongside Bronn, who accompanies Tyrion and Catelyn up to the Eyrie but dies en route fighting with the Mountain Clansmen, is also described saying, "Chiggin grinned, showing yellow teeth." Talking about Mountain Clansmen, Shagga's appearance is described by Tyrion saying, "The huge man smiled, his teeth a yellow crevasse in the hairy wilderness of his beard," which seems quite apt for a mountain man, really. Shagga seems quite intimidating, and I guess the yellowness of his teeth adds to the scariness, but if you're on his good side, then it's all good. He seems alright, really. One of the regular visitors to the House of Black and White while Arya is staying there is described as, "The fat fellow had fierce black eyes, a hook nose, and a mouthful of yellow teeth." So I guess he doesn't sound too pleasant either. Another man not too pleasant because he's sided with the Boltons is Arnulf Karstark, described by Theon, Reek, as his eyes were grey and greedy, his teeth yellow, his forked beard a tangle of snow and silver. Asha later gives the same description in her chapter, saying, "He had a scrawny neck, squinty grey eyes, and yellow teeth." Tyrion's new master in A Dance with Dragons, once he is auctioned off as a slave, is Yezan Zo-Kagaz, who is even referred to as the Yellow Whale and Lord Yellowbelly. When he's bidding at the auction, he's said to have weighed the sellswords with his yellow eyes, flicked his tongue across his yellow teeth. Lord Godric Burrell, Lord of Sweet Sister, Shield of Sisterton, Master of Breakwater Castle, and Keeper of the Night Lamp, is a bit piratey, and he's described as Davos as, "He still had all his teeth," Davos saw, "though most of them were yellow, and the one on top was black and dead." Okay, so yellow-teeth people, they do seem a bit dodgy. I wonder if, going by image stereotypes, if people with brown or rotten teeth are therefore worse. Gale, who is a slave Dany freed in Astapor, and then bejewels himself and acts as an envoy for the recently self-proclaimed King Cleon of Astapor, is a rotten-seeming character. Dany says Gale smiled, his teeth were brown and rotten, and later, Lord Gale had a mouth of brown and rotten teeth and the pointed yellow face of a weasel. When negotiations go awry, he spits at Dany. Strong Belwas seized him by the shoulder and slammed him down onto the marble so hard that Dany heard Gale's teeth crack. So I guess his rotten teeth don't hold up so well. They dragged him out feet first, leaving several broken teeth and a trail of blood behind. Remember when Tyrion is up at the area and he's locked in one of those sky cells? His jailer, or gaoler, however you want to say it, is Mord, and he's described by Tyrion as, "The turnkey was 20 stone of gross stupidity, with brown rotting teeth and small dark eyes." He teases Tyrion with his food. Mord shambled backward, grinning through his rotten teeth. Mord beats Tyrion, but Tyrion manages to bribe the turnkey with the promise of gold if Mord tells Lysa that Tyrion wishes to confess his crimes. Before leaving the Eyrie, Tyrion pays Mord a purse of gold and offers another reward if he ever goes to Casterly Rock. I wonder if he will. Later in the story, when Sansa is at the Eyrie posing as Elaine, she meets Mord, and Sansa saw to her astonishment that the Gaeler's teeth were made of gold. So I guess he had nothing to buy up there but new teeth, bless him. We also meet some other unsavory characters with rotten teeth. Cotho, the most sadistic of Drogo's blood riders, is told no by Dany when she is defending innocent people, and his lips skinned back from his crooked brown teeth in a terrible mockery of a smile. Before he then threatens her, Craster, that old bastard, is a horrible character, and when Jon meets him, he's described as, "Their host gave a nasty smile, showing a mouthful of broken brown teeth." And later by Sam after Craster's wife birthed a son. The wildling smiled, revealing a mouth of brown, rotten teeth. So John and Sam both literally say the same thing there. Rorge of Rorge, Biter, and Jaqen, those guys caged up, is described by Arya after she frees him, and he's later serving under Jaqen as when he saw her, he stopped and grinned, showing a mouthful of crooked brown teeth under the leather flap he sometimes wore to cover the hole in his face. He's definitely a rotten type of person. He later finds and dons the Hound's helm, once worn by Sandor Clegane, the Hound's helm, and wears it the helm during the raid of Saltpans, which ultimately gets blamed on the Hound. And it's a brutal raid. He is a bad guy. One of the guards Theon meets at Moat Cailin, and let's face it, none of those guys are doing very well, is described by Theon as his teeth were brown and his breath stank of ale and onion. I mean, at least you could smell that from whatever else it stinks of there. Theon also notes one of Ramsay Bolton's bested boys, his best buds, is Sour Allen, his breath foul, with the smell from his rotten teeth. Ugh. Reminds me of, the dead tooth thing from Sunny. However, Yoren is described when first meeting Arya as his face pressed close to hers, long black hair and a tangled beard with rotten teeth. Don't look. Which is scary, but ultimately, he helps her out. But then again, there's a reason that he went to the wall. On the subject of these grey characters, let's look at Theon's teeth journey. Supposedly, he may have once had white teeth, as Lord Ramsay confessed. I may have broken some of his pretty white teeth. When we first hear from Theon again as Reek, he's not been treated so great. Blood ran from the corners of his mouth as he nibbled at the rat with what remained of his teeth. And Theon is terrified, thinking, if I run, he will take another finger from me. He will take more of my teeth. I mean, you could say he somewhat deserved what he had after he did, but that is very prolonged. Dude should have just been beheaded, and that's that. But no, he lives on. Ramsay had left him with so many broken teeth that chewing was agony. And we find out how he lost his teeth. Ramsay hated my smiles, so he took a hammer to my teeth. I can hardly eat. I mean, you remember all those early quotes about Theon, smiling smugly like only he had a secret, But he apparently does still have a few shards left. Half his teeth were gone, and half of those still left to him were broken and splintered. Oof. There's another Ironborn that we know of, Dagmar Cleftjaw, caused by the long axe that had nearly killed him as a boy. The blow had splintered his jaw, shattered his front teeth, and left him 4 lips where other men had but 2. He's a bit of a character, and he knew Theon well, and when he speaks to him, Dagmar's grin twisted his lips apart and showed the brown splinters of his teeth. He's also described by Theon as his hair is white and his teeth are rotten, but he still has a taste for glory. I mean, he doesn't sound like the most well-rounded, decent person, but he seems like a solid friend, So far, I think, like Pia, the people that are missing teeth have seen some shit. Kaholo is the oldest of Drogo's blood riders. He is a squat, bald man with crooked nose and mouthful of broken teeth, shattered by a mace 20 years before, when he was saving the young Kalaka from sellswords who had hoped to sell him to his father's enemies. Cersei describes Maggie the Frog. Her teeth were gone, and her dugs hung down to her knees. You could smell sickness on her if you stood too close. So maybe, despite her mangy skills, maybe she's had a bit of sickness. Maybe she's not been very well. Maybe that's why she's out in the woods. Lysa complains to Sansa about Jon Arryn, saying half his teeth were gone and his breath stank like bad cheese. I mean, cut him some slack. He was an old guy. Pycelle, another old dude, is described by Jaime as having loose skin dangling beneath the old man's jaw, the small querulous mouth and missing teeth, warts and wrinkles and age spots too numerous to count. Kerwin, who is a young man aboard Victorian's ship, is also missing teeth. When he first came aboard the Iron Victory, he had a smirky little smile too. But one night off the stepstones, he had smiled at the wrong man, and Burton Humble had knocked out 4 of his teeth. Asha also notes a woman on 10 Towers in the Iron Islands who she calls Three Tooth, and says she seems to have lost 2 more of her teeth. Do you call her One Tooth now? Asha also sees one of the Queen's men in Stannis' camp at the Crofters' village, one of the men found eating another man. They are desperate. Well, he's given it all that, and Sir Clayton Sugg jabs him with a spear end. When he rose, he spat out a mouthful of blood and broken teeth, and went right on. One of Sir Armory Lorch's men, who storm Yoren's camp at the abandoned holdfast, is a skinny man trying to get over the wall, and Arya says he was bold and scared-looking, with missing teeth and a speckly grey beard. After Arya's been captured and is on the way to Harrenhal, there's an old man in the group who speaks too loudly, and a guard came sauntering over to shut them up. The old man had lost both his teeth, and there was no more talk that night. The insurance seller in Bravos that Arya is tasked with watching also has missing teeth, as she notes he bites his coins, always on the left side of his mouth, where he still had all his teeth. I have a few honourable mentions, or well, things that couldn't quite make fit anywhere else, but I just want to get into before the last topic. Jaime, who is said to have white teeth, is also noted to have started grinding his teeth. His hand was throbbing again. He ground his teeth. Rosalind Frey, who Caitlin meets when Edmure is betrothed to her, and Caitlin is being judgy, describes Rosalind as having a gap between 2 of her front teeth that made her shy with her smiles. Kind of cute. Harith, nicknamed Horse, a stable hand from Molestown, is described by John as big blonde Harith with his buck teeth. I wonder if he has giants as ancestors. Lord Commander Mormont drank lemon in his beer every day and claimed that that was why he still had all his own teeth. Lastly, beloved Oberyn Martell, who actually loses his teeth in the duel with the Mountain. Clegane slammed his fist into the Dornishman's mouth, making splinters of his teeth. Not the Mountain's first time, and not his last either. Poor Pia. Our last teethy topic for today is how sorcery or disguises can potentially change them. Varys is familiar with disguising himself to get around the city, or even out of the city, and at one point when bringing shade to see Tyrion, Varys smiled, showing a mouthful of rotten teeth. God knows what he's been rubbing on his teeth to make them discoloured and look rotten, but it's clearly part of a disguise, and it's a good idea if you want to, if you've got good teeth and you want to pose as a commoner so as not to arouse suspicion, good idea. Rub some crap on there. When Arya is sent out on a task by the House of Black and White and is allowed a face or disguise, the waif says, one side of your face is caved in where your cheekbone shattered, and half your teeth are missing. She probed around the inside of her mouth with her tongue, but found no holes or broken teeth. Sorcery, she thought. I have a new face. An ugly, broken face. If she had a mirror, that would blow your mind. Like, imagine if she had a mirror and could just see herself like that, but not feel that. It would be like a photo filter. Lastly, the whole Mance Raider Rattleshirt swap, which is kind of given away as well by the teeth. Rattleshirt is first described as a wretched creature with cracked brown teeth, and Mance is never specifically defined, but definitely not mentioned as having brown teeth. That's something Jon would have surely mentioned. Mance smiles at him a few times. When at the wall and Mance is supposedly burned and Rattleshirt is there waiting for Jon, and Melisandre, Rattleshirt is wearing this ruby on his wrist. It's a clear sign of a glamour, a sorcery-induced change of appearance. The wildling grins at him through a mouthful of brown unbroken teeth. He burned the man he had to burn for all the world to see. We all do what we have to do, Snow, even kings. So the king beyond the wall is taking on the appearance of the wretched creature with the cracked brown teeth, Rattleshirt, doing what he has to do. That's it for today. I don't know why, I just found it all quite interesting, kind of character building stuff. Let me know what you thought. Did it raise or answer any questions for you? Let me know. Let me know if you have any other video ideas. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not already. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter or X, and there's a Patreon. Links are in the description below. That's it. Go brush your teeth and floss. Cheerio. One actual person is thought of having green teeth, and that's Lemon Cloak by Lemon Frey. Fucking hell, lemons on the brain. Merit Frey.